All right, boys, it's time. It's finally done. We have been testing for the past 4 different streams, 12 hours, 4, 5 hours, 9 hours, and then right now we are running at 12 hours in. Lots of testing here, and then it's enough to make a proper conclusion and prioritizations and give you guys kind of like the different priorities and stuff. All right, so we're back to hey, it's Notepad Sky. Bam! Alright, here we go. If you are interested on my findings and other things that you might want to consider because it will make you just a better player and you might miss out if you don't listen to it, well, it's up to you. Anyways, so if you just care about Crown, like how to build her, this is pretty much it. So for pulling, I would say yes, you definitely pull. She is insanely high upgrade to the team. It goes about between 20% to 50-70% damage increase depending on the team that you pre-existing have. So that is how significant she is going to give to you. Now for dupes, predominantly no, but here's the thing, she is going to be expected to be used on a lot of situations, so that will be up to you. Now let's start with skills. Priority is your skill 1 and burst. Minimum, trying to max skill 1 and burst as a priority. You can upgrade skill 2 afterwards. I'm not saying that 4 is the minimum, your end goal, and you want to get this to 10 10 10. It is pretty high priority. If you have to choose between skill 1 and skill 2 because they share the same resources, I would go with the skill 1 first. Now for overload, it is pretty much max ammo, attack, elemental. As a machine gun, that is pretty much like the main thing for you. You don't need max ammo though because of how she has resilience. She will be equipping cube as resilience and she has high reload speed, so you don't absolutely need max ammo, but it is still nice to have. Obviously it's, you know, less reload time, right? So let's move on. I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the skills and the importance on them. As I mentioned, the skill 1 is pretty much the highest priority because it gives you attack and reload. If you upgrade it, it does give about 7 to 10% damage increase. 2% damage increase is going from 0 LB to MLB. That is gonna be that's how it worked out for me, and I looked at the different DPSs, different teams. That's how much I got. So it's gonna be up to you if that's what you feel. Maybe some people might see a bigger increase. I think there was one team that I saw like a little bit 3%, but you know, regardless, it was really low. And the reason for that is because she is a defender. Defender has the lowest attack, and so even if you get higher attack on her, the damage increase comparatively to others is just not gonna be that much. You guys are not missing out if you are not MLBing her. Once you start upgrading your skill 1, you can actually start equipping resilience as well to your other machine guns. For example, I had Modernia. My Modernia saw about a 5% damage increase, and it was actually a consistent 5% damage increase when I switched from Bastion to Resilience, and my Modernia had about 100% max ammo. And some shotguns are also okay with equipping resilience now with her in the team. Let's talk about skill 2. It is still a high priority, like I said, but see, the thing is, like, upgrading the skill is about giving about 2 to 4% or 3 to 7%. That different percentage is the reason for that is because it depends on how the team relies on the skill 2, or so like if they're constantly proccing it or not constantly proccing it. Another thing also is just to give you an idea, what does 100% heal uptime give you? If you can provide a heal proc time of 100% as opposed to other than just like getting heals from herself whenever she gets max stacks, you are actually going to see about between 7 to 10% damage increase. In terms of team building, the skill 2 does have an effect in terms of the team building itself. But in terms of just like upgrading the skills in particular, you're not gonna see that much more increase. Now let's talk about who are the healers. Rem just doesn't work. It's flat out in her skill description that group based on healing is actually not gonna be affected for her. And Uni is just completely impractical. There's Pepper and Mary, they have like a single target heal when they hit last bullet, but in terms of in practice and actual fighting, this might work on shooting range, but in terms of in actual fighting, this might actually not work. Marciana AU heal is a little bit more helpful, and then also Naga, as people probably have known by now. So Naga is a constant proc of heal, and Rapunzel is a constant proc of heal. Some people are probably discounting some units that are like regular Helm or Summer Mary because they just procced it once. I don't think it's a big deal because it's not like she doesn't proc it herself also. So it's not bad, and also I would say these two units are also meta team healers, so they are good to consider as well, especially if you don't have, probably I would say the main ones are probably these three: Marciana, Naga, and Rapunzel. Now let's talk about the burst. All right, that's just like straight up just 10-12% damage increases, just max it out. That's it. So now I'm gonna talk about how she's gonna start working in campaign, in union raid, and in solo raid. Let's start off with the basics. I have a team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, and team 5 just in general as the current setup right now on solo raid. We have the Tia Naga team, the Bunnies, the Dorothy Privity, and then the Rem team with Scarlet, Black Shadow, and Alice, and then kind of like left over. I want to talk about this because to give you an idea how much does she really provide overall. Crown will be either in team 1, team 3, team 4, team 5, and the reason for that is because, and she's not gonna go to Bunnies, right? Because there's no chance that Crown is gonna be on Bunnies because it just doesn't make any sense. What would happen if we start putting in Crown in the different teams? To give you an idea, I put in the raw damage if I use the default team that I have, and I tried to do this in kind of like a particular form against a boss that has core in it, and then I kind of tried to act it setting in team solo raid, and I tried to consider what if there's a healer and what if there is no healer. For example, what if can Crown be the replacement as a support and also the defensive support, like the offensive and defensive support, and that basically she replaces the healer. Team 1 with the Tia Naga, I saw this is a boss with the core, and I saw like a 28% damage increase. It was like a 1.1 bill. It was definitely one of the best ones to get upgrade just raw damage increase. Team 3, which is the Dorothy Privity, I saw about a 42% to 70% damage increase. It gave me though between 600M to 1 bill, and it was because, and the reason why it's high is because the starting damage was just 1.4. Let's talk the Rem team, and I was using Scarlet, Black Shadow, and Alice, and it was doing 2.7 bill when I was using Rem, but then it saw an increase. I tried to play around different teams and what if I put a healer and what if I don't put a healer. It was getting an increase of 500 to 1.1. So this is actually roughly equal to the team 1, but there is a lot of variation in it, and it was getting a plus 18% to 40%. And then the team 5, this team 5 is pretty much flex. Different people will have different kinds of team 5s. You have the Snow White, you have Shotgun, or whatever have you, typically 2B or A2, whatever people use, or the regular Scarlet. And I saw an overall increase of about 400 to 700M from a 1.6 bill base. So it was 28% to 50% damage. So as you can see, it was like 20% to 70% damage increase depending on the team. That's just really high damage. So the team 5 does see the least damage increase, and that's just because there's just lack of DPS right now. So that's also why it's kind of difficult, because you start also slotting in the burst 2 with cooldown reduction for her so that she can burst as often as possible, or you just remove the cooldown reduction. So it is a lesser increase because of that. Now, do keep in mind though, because I put it in, the reason why they are higher damage is also because I took some more risk. Like I said, there are some where I completely replaced the healer itself. So for example, replacing Rem, which has heals, for Crown herself, and then Biscuit, replace it with Crown. So there's just that gap and there's that risk involved. I also added some where I tried to add healer also in those existing teams, and it will vary. Now, let's talk about the question that people say, is Crown and Naga still even to be used in solo raid? Actually, I would say in union raid, I would say there is a high priority or high chance for her to be used with Naga because of how there's only 3. But in solo raid, is it still be used? Well, actually, let me just give you an example instead, where I actually managed to play around and I actually managed to take advantage of me swapping it out, putting in Crown and Naga. Basic example I did, so it was 3.9 bill with Tia Naga, right? But then with Crown and Naga, I managed to do a 5 bill with my team 1. The question is, where does Tia go? I tried to actually use actually this is not team 2, this is actually team 4. So in the team 4 with the Scarlet, Black Shadow, and Alice, I actually attempted to try to just use Tia with Rem, and it actually did a 2.74 bill. Contrary, I know that there's a combination that works with Tia Rupee, but obviously Rupee just as a buffer alone is just not really that great. Here's the thing that I did figure out, and this is because of how one-dimensional we were thinking. I think we were too stubborn to think that, oh, Tia should have her stacks, and so she should have either Rupee or Naga alongside with her to make her work. But actually, in my finding, I even tried to do it where I replaced Tia with Modernia, and the damage is actually not that far off from each other. The reason for that is because one of the things is because Scarlet Black Shadow is a very high DPS team, and since Alice is also supporting Scarlet Black Shadow, so in a single DPS team comp where you have like a really high DPS, I was actually just using Tia's burst only when Scarlet Black Shadow is bursting. So it was on cooldown whenever Alice is bursting, and then Tia was helping out, and it still is even equivalent to as if I had mod. So it was like a litter, Scarlet Black Shadow, Alice, Rem, and Modernia versus litter, Rem, Scarlet Black Shadow, Alice, and Tia. This is just one example. It did happen, and I'm just saying, do not discount the Crown and Naga because I have to build this, right? Like, there's just that option. So this team did an overall about between 7.5 to 7.8 bill, and then I tried to do the traditional Tia Naga, and then what if I even had the Crown Modernia? It was a 3.9 bill actually. So with the Crown Modernia, I got a 3.9 bill on the, sorry, this is team 4 again because I changed the number earlier, but the Crown Moderna 3.9 bill and then Tia Naga 3.9 bill. So eventually, with no healer on the team 4, because it was a Crown Moderna, it was a 7.8 bill. So it was actually roughly equal from this one, but the difference here is it has a healer on Rem here. But then now, if I tried to put in a healer, which is like Crown and then had Rapunzel, I actually did less damage. So if I needed a healer on with the Tia Naga and the Crown Rapunzel team, it only did 7.1 bill. Now obviously there's also the argument that, oh yeah, we could just use Rem in the Snow White team, right? But you know, that's not always the case, because in a Snow White team you would use Miranda with Dala, so there's almost like no position for Rem, and some people found like success on it if they just use Yolha team right on that one, or the shotgun team. You know, there's just different reasons why that maybe this is the better option. And again, this is just a food for thought. It's not always like the actual solution. It's gonna vary from account to account. One thing to think about is, does it have core? If it has core, then Crown Naga is actually a consideration as a team to use as team 1, because you do have like your main DPS, and maybe if they're really strong, then they will get like absurdly just way more DPS, right? Do you need healing? That's another thing to keep in mind, because it's still an overall DPS loss. Typically, if you try to add an healer, try to take advantage of the shield. So it's gonna vary from boss to boss again, from team to team. That's just gonna be how it is on Crown. Another question is, do you have enough DPS? Or if you don't have enough units, then probably putting Crown in the higher teams. For people that don't have rem, then you can start using Crown as an option. So who's your main DPS, who's relevant for the boss content? That's another thing. Crown would want to ideally buff one of the best DPS for that content, because she is one of the best buffers right now. So you do want her to be buffing a really strong DPS. Let's say the Iron team. For me, I would want Crown to be buffing Red Hood. These are just food for thought. Try to think about the damage opportunity when you're putting in Crown versus putting her in some other teams. Now let's start to talk about the other teams that I want to talk about. The campaign team, the most popular one now, and what even Mr. Kanto used to fully clear the hard mode, is this team: Crown, Modernia, Alice, Red Hood, and Naga. And then from there, you try to tweak in different teams. For the most part, you will use Red Hood as your main burst 1 buffer. Most campaign can be finished within typically 2 to 3 bursts. When it goes to 3 bursts, what you do is you try to find some way to stall the team or the mobs. That one mob is like still alive, but it's just right before the boss. You wait it out until Red Hood's cooldown comes back up again, and then you burst the boss. Now, there's definitely alternatives. For Modernia, you can swap in with Scarlet Black Shadow. The reason for that is because for wave clear, typically I would have like a boss killer, so that one that would actually try to, when they burst, they would be the one that is also hitting the boss. So Alice and actually Red Hood would be good here as well. That would typically be, if you use Red Hood, then that would be when you have another burst 1 cooldown, so it would be like Litter or D. You could use Naga, or alternatively Rapunzel or other buffers typically, because you will just have 2 main bursters, right? And then you have your burst 1, and then so the last one should ideally be a buffer unit. And Rapunzel is technically an indirect buffer just because she can provide healing too. So that's the idea behind it. And then you have these electric units for elemental advantage. Now let's try to talk about just the general idea in terms of basic team building. You have Crown and then your burst 1. The burst 1 is going to be predominantly D cooldown reduction units. So it will be D, it would be Litter, Volume, and Dorothy. The other thing is the sniper rifle rocket launcher. And I think for those of you that haven't watched the video yet, I really advise you to understand what is happening on this one. This massive gameplay changes right here on this video. And I talked about it, but basically the idea behind team building right now is, if you want to get a fast charge to catch up with the cooldowns and take advantage of that, you have to be controlling the sniper rifle or rocket launcher. You don't have to fast charge with them. It can be that you have boomer hands, but because the way they did it now is it's actually better, and it scales as your based on how fast your charge is, so it is still good. The main difference here is you have to control it. I would suggest, if you haven't watched it, you should definitely watch this massive gameplay changes. It is a huge gameplay change. I haven't seen people talk about it, but it is pretty huge, especially with how you want to fight. Because if you're the type of person who typically use like machine gun, assault rifles, submachine gun as the one that you're controlling, and if you want to really take advantage of this is a pretty massive buff. You should definitely you're gonna start using sniper rifle or rocket launchers. Now, and then the other one is a burst 3, and the last slot is the flex slot, and typically that is where the one that doesn't really burst, but they will contribute a lot to the team, and that would be Modernia, Naga, could be Rapunzel to help buff Crown out and constant heals. There's the Marciana, Mary, Pepper, and regular Mary. But in practicality, Pepper and Mary it's not that great. But I digress. Anyways, you can also use Privity. Now I just wrote down the different teams here, like for Union Raid alternatives, water, electric. There was a fire, iron, wind. You know, I think this is just pretty straightforward. There's just different ones. And the example of solar raid replacements, this is the one where I actually tried to replace Crown. I replaced Tia. An example of when I replaced Ram. Example of that. This one is an example of if I did replace the burst 2, you can actually start swapping in. And one thing that I did see actually pretty nicely is this. She does open up the burst 2 or this team, this Dorothy team, if you don't have summer anise. So for people that don't have summer anise, it is a pretty good upgrade because you can use Scarlet here, and then like you have another healer. It could be Helm, or it could be Rapunzel, or it could be Biscuit. Someone asked before, is Helm or Rapunzel better when in terms of healing? It actually depends on who is the second burster. So let's say you have like a really good burster like Summer Anise here, but then if your second burster is, for example, Privity only, then Helm is the better option because Helm also provides attack damage, additional attack damage, and it's not like you're missing out too much on it. But if, say, for example, it's a DPS, so kind of like Maxwell or Alice, for example, if you want to burst with them, then Rapunzel would be the better option as a healer instead. Just an idea for a lot of people here. And then there's the Snow White alternative, and it depends on how you're portioning out your team. This is one team 5 option for some of you, that if you don't have like a proper Snow White team, that's something to consider as well. And then there's also the shotgun alternative for some people that have invested in shotgun. You can actually completely replace Leona. That's about it. You pretty much can slaughter pretty much any team. Like I said, like I showed here also, you can pretty much like actually slaughter in many different teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if I find more. If I find more, maybe I'll put it in this thing. It is in the Union Raid Solar Raid Team Comps Guide, so you guys can just check the description if you guys want to see. But I'll see if I can add more if I do find some. But yeah, that's about it, chat. And thank you for chilling. What are you guys' thoughts on Crown? How many are you guys gonna get more duplicates or what? I think I'm cool with MLB. If you guys are going to ask me, I'm cool with MLB because I'm also just gonna get more duplicates over time, right? So I think yeah, that's about it for me.